Good morning. This is the first of what may or may not be a series I'm calling the Daily Signal, in which I roll out of bed, put on no makeup, grab a pot of tea, read the Daily Signal, and debunk it over breakfast. What is the Daily Signal? The Daily Signal is Heritage Foundation's horrible daily newsletter, which they send to my inbox every day. Now, to be fair, I asked them to do this, but it's horrible. I usually don't read it. I usually look at it, roll my eyes in disgust, and just like, I can't right now. So this is an effort to hold myself accountable and keep up with what the right is doing. So just a couple caveats right out the gate. This is not going to be a rigorous intellectual exercise. I just woke up. I'm not a morning person. The idea is to do a quick and dirty rundown of what they're thinking, why it doesn't make any goddamn sense. Maybe I Google a couple statistics and move on with our day. A lot of my stuff is a more deep engagement with far-right ideas than this is going to be. People who are going to come into the comments and be like, you're not being fair. Like, it is fucking 9 o'clock in the morning, which for me is like 4 a.m. So no, you're not going to get my rigorous best. What you're going to get is a rundown of someone who is way too tired for this shit, looking at shit I want to look at. So whatever. I don't know how long this is going to last. Like, this might be forever. This might be until I get bored. We'll see how much time it takes me in the morning. I think it'll be fun. Let's check my inbox. So here is the email. Morning bell. Good morning from Washington, where school choice and freedom of religion score another win at the Supreme Court. If you didn't hear, and I have not looked into the case enough, but there was a case in Maine where the Supreme Court ruled that basically the state has to give equal money to religion because apparently freedom of religion is funding it with school dollars or with state dollars. Oh, sorry, I forgot to add. I'm going to choose one article, and it's going to be the article that makes me like the angriest / laugh the hardest. I am picking low-hanging fruit. Again, this is not, if you're looking for like a rigorous, rational, centrist voice debate, this ain't going to be it. This is going to be me picking the most absurd thing I can find and then laughing at it / deconstructing it. So, this damn vacation is over. Clarence Thomas recalls grandfather's influence. Justice Clarence. Okay, so this is Clarence. It's a Clarence Thomas puff piece. Okay. Supreme Court upholds school choice. That's what I was just talking about. Bidenflation. That's nice. Health Republicans call for accountability on Bidenflation and energy crisis. Clever name. It would be fun to see how many times they use that phrase. Like, I wonder how proud of that they are. I bet they're pretty proud. Americans are paying about $2,500 more for energy because of Biden administration policy. Pretty sure it's because of Russia and capitalism, but Biden's not knocking it out of the park. Inflation continues to clobber us. Can the Fed help? Raise the interest rates thing. It is too early for economics. We're not doing that. Parents' Guide to Children's Rights aims to save America's public schools from CRT. Okay, I did a whole article on that. That sounds pretty promising. The Southeastern Legal Foundation scope. Okay, so First Amendment speech rights lawfully restricted but not extinct. Okay, so we're all for the First Amendment until we don't like it is basically the lesson of today's. Okay, this is probably it. Transgender activists manipulate parents with suicide threats. Incredible. Do you want a dead daughter or a live son? This question, which is really a threat, is the central tenet of the campaign selling gender ideology to parents. Okay. Woo! All right, it is. Okay. That is a strong contender. Confucius Institute's closing, but Chinese influence operations continue on college campuses, despite the. Okay. Wow, that is neck and neck. Those are both very powerful. So Confucius Institute or trans activists and suicide. Okay, it's got to be trans activists. That's a close one. All right. Let's go. All right, we've got a sad person. Do you want a dead daughter or a live son? This question, which is really a threat, is the central tenet of the campaign selling gender ideology to parents. Parents are often told that they are putting their gender nonconforming child at risk of suicide if they don't medically transition him or her to appear as the opposite sex, or at least treat their child as the sex he or she chooses. The child then internalizes this information and believes that suicide is an inevitable outcome without transition, as opposed to an unhealthy response to internal distress. Okay, So this isn't going to take very long. That right out of the gate is a really interesting assertion because the data on trans kids killing themselves precedes the data on trans kids killing themselves. Allow me to explain. You see, you can't know the results of the study until you do the study. So study results can't contaminate the study because of the basic laws of temporality. So the pernicious assumption behind this horrific question, it is horrific to contemplate that your child might fucking be so unhappy they kill themselves if you don't help them, is that parents do not have the best, the assumption is that parents do not have the best interest of their children at heart, and that the experts know better. Nothing could be further from the truth. Okay, time out. Telling you information that might help you is not assuming that you don't have the best interest of your children at heart. It's thinking, hey, you might not have all the information that you need to make a good decision for your kid. Like, let's say that your kid goes in and gets diagnosed with cancer. Like, you're going to want to listen to the doctor after that because you don't know anything about cancer. Like, the doctor's been to school for years. It's not an impingement on your intelligence. It's just that we think you could learn because you don't know everything. But this is like the idea that knowledge is an attack, that like, I think this comes actually from the religious aspect of conservatism, like the idea that knowledge is handed down from on high in like kind of broad commandments and then we interpret them, rather than something that like maybe new input would change our minds. For example, and like, you're like, that's not fair. Well, you're seeing an example of it right here. Like, the pernicious assumption behind this horrific question is maybe you don't know the statistics about what it means for a child to be trans and then told to suppress that shit and act according to the gender they were assigned at birth. Like, maybe you're just not aware. It's possible that you don't know that 41% of trans kids will attempt suicide as things are right now. Like, you might not know that. And that would be important information as somebody who loves your kid to know. But that's not the way it reads. The way it reads is we're trying to tell you what to do with your kid. Like, we're suggesting a course of action, but not because we don't trust you, because we do. Like, we do trust you to take in new information and basically use the higher brain function that separates us from the animals. So, let's carry on. Parents who are not caught up in this social contagion know that children who threaten suicide are not born in the wrong body and that a risky regimen of puberty blockers, hormones, and surgeries won't bring children the peace and joy they desperately crave. A child who threatens suicide requires love, kindness, and therapy to address underlying struggles, not sterilization. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. You know what? We are going to have to click on that link. What the fuck is a social contagion? Let's find out. Oh, it's a tweet. It's a tweet. Our source on gender confusion being a social contagion is a tweet. Cool. Oh, good. We got some graphs out of context. We got some pictures of trans people. We've got some graphics. Nobody likes the gender red person, guys. Like, nobody likes that. Okay, yeah, no, it's a thread. It's a thread by Mia Cry Me a River, who is citation fucking needed. I don't know who this is. I don't know why we should listen to her. But apparently that's our source for trans stuff being a social contagion. We've got scientific studies and some fucking random Twitter account. Cool. Okay. Parents who are not caught up in this social contagion know that children. Okay. Those who threaten suicide are not born in the wrong body. Okay, that's that terminology. I feel like a lot of trans activists would debate the born in the wrong body thing. It's just they're trans. A risky regimen of puberty blockers, hormones, and surgeries. Okay, so first of all, remember earlier where they were like, they led with surgery and then were like, or at least treat the child as the sex they choose. Like, that's the first step. They're making it sound like the minute your child is like, I'm questioning my gender, we're gonna stick them under the fucking knife. And it's like literally just not true. Like, I understand if that was true, I would be extremely worried also. Cause like, as somebody who questioned her own gender and then decided that I'm cis, and think I think that I'm a better person for it and like have a better understanding of my gender. The gender confusion was cool. I resolved it. For me, my resolution was that I'm cis. But like, if people, the minute somebody like me was like, hey, I think maybe I'm not the gender I was assigned at birth, were like sticking me in fucking surgery, I'd be real worried about that shit. That would be real. That would be bad. The first step is like a lot of counseling, right? You bring your kid into like a gender specialist who can like help your kid work through those feelings. But again, yeah, so we're not starting with surgery. Now the next step would be puberty blockers. That's correct, which are, by the way, used medically on kids all the time. I don't know if you're aware of this, but puberty is coming earlier and earlier for children. We don't really know why. My guess would be chemicals in our basically everything. But for whatever reason, kids are hitting puberty earlier. And in order to solve the problem of like 7-year-old girls developing breasts, sometimes doctors will prescribe puberty blockers so kids can have a regular childhood. And this shit is like pressing the pause button, right? This isn't going to destroy them. You know, this is established medical science. It's just hitting the pause button. It's not irreversible. It's not the same thing as hormones or surgery. So lumping these three things together is what Ayn Rand would call a package deal. I'm going to pull out my fucking objectivist knowledge here because the Heritage Foundation loves Ayn Rand. That's called a package deal, where you basically package 2 or 3 different concepts together, and then say they're the same thing. They aren't. These aren't the same thing. So hormones, also not the same things. Now, hormones are more permanent than puberty blockers. You're going to develop some secondary sex characteristics of that correspond to the hormones you're taking. And, that's something that you got to think about. Now, largely, if you stop, things are going to go back to normal. Not everything. You can do the research yourself. Surgery doesn't happen for children. Surgery doesn't happen for children. It can happen for minors, which is different, but it doesn't happen for children, flat out. If it happens for children, post a link in the comments section. Preemptive strike, if we're doing surgery, gender-related surgery of any kind, to fix intersex issues, to do gender reassignment, for kids, I'm against that, flat out. We all are. Like, the medical science is against that because it's weird. Don't do that. Kids need to figure it out. But at a certain age, after a lot of talking about it as a kid, maybe the puberty blockers, trying out the hormones, living it as the gender of your choice, of your whatever, then surgery makes sense. Yeah, that's at that point it's a bodily autonomy issue. A child who threatens suicide requires love, kindness, and therapy, says the Ginny Gentles. Yeah. No argument there. Yeah, let's give trans kids love, kindness, and therapy. Not sterilization. We've got another link. Let's see what this leads to, shall we? The Christian Post. Puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones do sterilize children. Hospital consent docs show. Consent documents from Children's Hospital Los Angeles that were made public this week reveal that puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones used on gender dysphoric children do in fact cause sterility. All right, let's see what these consent docs are. Okay, we've got a drive doc. Research, you want to learn more about what happens to children who are transgender and use the medicine to stop puberty. So, I don't know if you've ever signed consent documents, but here's what's going on. Let's say you go in for LASIK eye surgery. A lot of people have had LASIK eye surgery. You're going to have to sign a consent document that tells you that you could go blind from lasers. You could have a horribly botched surgery. You are unlikely to bleed out and die. You are unlikely to go blind from LASIK. And you are unlikely to be sterilized with puberty blockers. Okay? Let's see what they say. I'm looking for the part where they talk about sterilization. I'm looking at that. I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. Okay, no sterilization. No reproductive. Here we go. Medications for blocking puberty. Risks of puberty blockers. Let's see what these are. Okay, the side effects and safety of this medicine are not completely understood. There may be long-term risks that are not known. That's going to be true for any relatively new medication. Any medication, it's like, we think we know, just for the record, it's like the vaccine, which is probably not the best analogy to draw given the audience, but there's some things you can't know. You got to make decisions based on what you do know. So let's see what the risks are. Because the article said that we have outright stated that this was going to sterilize kids. So if your child starts puberty blockers in the early stages of puberty and then goes on to gender-affirming hormones, they will not develop sperm or eggs. Okay, and then goes on to gender-affirming hormones. This means they will not be able to have biological children. This is an important aspect of blocking puberty and progressing to hormones that you should understand prior to moving forward. If your child discontinues the use of blockers and does not go on to gender-affirming hormones, they will continue their pubertal development about 6 to 12 months after stopping the medication, and fertility would be maintained. So basically, they're lying. That's basically what's happening here. They're lying. The children captivated by gender ideology often have underlying conditions, including ADHD or autism spectrum disorder, which are associated with lagging social skills, obsessive rumination, depression, and anxiety. So, I'm not a psychologist. I do know that it's true that trans people, people with other mental health concerns have a higher rate of being trans. That's true. But it's a chicken and egg thing, right? Like, did that stuff... The autism spectrum is not a chicken and egg. Autism comes first. You're still allowed to make decisions when you're autistic. I don't know if you know that, but, like, autistic people still get to make decisions about their own life, and they should be allowed to do that. So two of my very favorite people on Earth are autistic, and they're both very much able to make decisions and should be allowed to. But, like, basically, the idea that, like, trans kids, like, are just depressed, like, a chicken and egg, right? Are they depressed because they're trans, or are they trans because they're depressed? And, like, if I was being actively socialized in a gender that wasn't my own, I'd be pretty fucking depressed, I'd be sad. I might obsessively ruminate about it even, and I might have trouble paying attention. I don't know. I just feel like it's possible that, like, maybe transitioning would address some of those other concerns as well. Moving on. Both research studies and the stories shared by a growing number of those who have done transitions reveal a tendency to self-harm and suffer from eating disorders. Again, being trans causes some distress when it's not treated. Now, this is talking about those who have detransitioned. I'm not seeing any links for studies here. My understanding is it's pretty rare for people to detransition. I'd be interested in seeing the research on that. But, like, it's a pretty small minority of people who do detransition, so it's a little bit like saying, like, 90% of those who had their eyes burned out by LASIK surgery had bad vision before they went into LASIK surgery. Like, okay, cool. I don't know what you want from me. Life has been hard for these highly sensitive and emotionally intense young people, and they're understandably seeking relief. So what I love about this is that it simultaneously sounds sympathetic and completely infantilizes trans people. Like, honey, you're just sensitive. You're just sensitive. It's not... Anyway. These vulnerable children, often girls... Oh, so we admit that trans masc people exist. That's nice. I mean, obviously they're calling them girls, but you get the idea. Let's still a fucking point for trans masc people, I guess. Deserve their parents' involvement as they struggle through puberty, and they need their parents' emotional and financial support until they make it safely to adulthood. Yeah, like, who's threatening taking away their financial support? Heritage Foundation. Who's doing that? Would that be you? Would that be the parents who kick their kids out for being trans? Is that who's doing it? Because I'm pretty sure that's the only financial support that's being withdrawn here. At its horribly rotten core, the culture created by the question, do you want a dead daughter or a live son, intentionally drives a painful wedge between parents and children, unless parents consent without question to immediate social and medical transition. What? How do they write articles this long about nothing? I want to know. Like, there's no substance here. It does not intentionally drive a painful wedge between parents and children. Suicide could do that, a very painful wedge indeed. But the question of, are you going to give your kid medical care, is like a pretty rational one to ask. So Okay, parents who do anything to keep their children safe are shoved aside by arrogant and callous school staff, doctors, and therapists who want your child not to kill themselves or have these mental health conditions that you're so worried about them having. And again, the idea that immediate social and medical transition is the solution is just simply not true. It's just not the case. It's false. Children are told that doctors guess the gender when a child is born, sometimes get it wrong. If they don't feel like they fit into regressive stereotypes about males and females, they must be transgender. Wrong. I certainly don't fit into those regressive stereotypes, and I am pretty cis. A safe space is one that affirms fleeting feelings rather than biological reality. The whole idea of the process of going to therapy and doing puberty blockers is to decide whether those feelings are fleeting or not. Jesus Christ. Anyone who doesn't immediately and fully embrace their new transgender identity hates them and wants to erase them. More perniciously, children receive a steady drumbeat of messages focused on suicide or death. Yeah, because, that's not really for them. That's just true. It's just true that trans kids commit suicide at a higher rate than cis kids. And, this isn't a phase. It isn't a fleeting emotion. This is a dangerous condition. Being trans is dangerous in our day and age. It's not safe. If my kid had a dangerous medical condition, I'd want to know about it. I'd want to know so that I could help them because I would love my child, I assume. These slogans are used like a giant switch that turns off critical thinking and forbids even gentle questioning. No, it doesn't turn off critical thinking. It's an invitation to critical think. They repeat it over and over in colorful children's books, at GSA gender sexuality clubs. It's the Gender Sexuality Alliance, by the way. Calling it a sexuality club implies that, it's sexual, which is a lie that I've heard in my research on these so-called school board moms, where they believe that these clubs for kids who are LGBT are actively encouraging gay sex, which just isn't true. It's just flat out not the case. Again, I don't know what else to say except that's not true. Colorful children's picture books, again, feeding into that. Meetings in classroom lesson materials, right? So we're playing into the whole panic over schools grooming your children. So we're just giving a little ping, ping to the QAnon grooming shit. Organizations like Queer Kids, Gender Spectrum, Advocates for Youth, and of course Planned Parenthood, an organization that profits from this ideology by doling out cross-sex hormones at clinics across the country. Yeah, because it's so expensive to get estrogen and testosterone. These are generic medications. I promise you, this is not, do they know that Planned Parenthood is a donations-based nonprofit? Do they know people donate to Planned Parenthood? It's not a for-profit conglomerate. This isn't big abortion or big gender. This is literally a program that thrives on donations. If they were making all this money, I would assume that they wouldn't need them. But I don't know. Maybe they're really running some kind of testosterone kingpin. They won't be happy till we're all trans so that they can, get us on the hook for medication for the rest of our lives. Medication that costs almost nothing. It seems like they're, anyway. Although I do want to say something, actually. A lot of this shit wouldn't be as compelling as it is if there weren't problems with Big Pharma. This argument is rooted in truth. Not about Planned Parenthood or about trans issues, but about the fact that we live in a world where corporations will straight up lie to us to get money. The whole OxyContin thing, the oxycodone push by Purdue Pharmacies, is an example that has ravaged this country. We like to talk about the fentanyl epidemic. What this really is OxyContin Part 2. Because Big Pharma pushed pills on people that were highly addictive in order to make money. And then the government decided to shut that spigot off, instead of addressing the problem they'd created. They're just we'll shove it under the rug. And now people are overdosing from fentanyl at record rates. So this taps into a real concern. This is something I say a lot that I believe is true, is that fascism is a bad solution to real problems. So the real problem that this is getting at is that you can't trust corporations to have your best interests at heart. What I'm asking for any conservatives in the audience is to think about shifting where you're looking for these problems. The problem isn't Planned Parenthood. The problem is Purdue Pharmacy. The problem is corporations. And I would argue that if you go down that road far enough, you'll find that the problem is capitalism and the perverse incentives that it creates. And I think that's a better solution than this. I do. because it results in less dead kids. These slogans are also baked into local and state transgender policies adopted often quietly or even without a formal vote by school boards. Okay, yeah, again, we're feeding right into that. Misguided advocates for so-called transition procedures may be familiar with the suicide-centered activist slogans that populate their social media feed. Oh, are we calling out people for doing social media research when you had a Twitter feed as your source earlier? Okay, cool. And the materials distributed by many professional associations captured by this ideology, but they definitely haven't done the research to familiarize themselves with the irreversible damage that so many young people experience after transitioning to appears the opposite sex. That damage can include, according to a list compiled at The Federalist, ah yes, the famed doctors at The Federalist, loss of bone density, increased risk of blood clots, premature brain aging, and increased aggression, reduced capacity for sexual pleasure, future infertility, and increased risk of heart disease. Yeah, those are all risks. All medications come with side effects, all of them. You know what's a worse side effect than any of those? Suicide, which is why this article doesn't like us bringing it up. Because if you had a choice between loss of bone density and the suicide of your child, you know, I would go with the bone density. Increased risk of blood clots, birth control does that. A lot of medications do that. I'd go with the blood clots. Premature brain aging, pretty sure alcohol does that. Increased aggression, I don't know. Reading the news does that for me. Reduced capacity for sexual pleasure. Do you care about that now? You care about that? Interesting. Still would rather have that than suicide. SSRIs do the same thing. Those save lives too. Future infertility. Yep, that's a thing. Some people, that's an okay risk to take. That's some people are cool with not having kids. Hello. Increased risk of heart disease. So does bacon. So does fast food. I thought you were against outlawing those things. Me too, by the way. People should be allowed to eat whatever they want. People should be allowed to get hormone treatments. Have a nice day. Activists and misguided school staff, as well as an alarming number of doctors. Yeah, it's almost like there's science. And counselors who have carelessly embraced the gender gospel must stop making vulnerable students' lives harder. Are we using gospel as an insult? Is the Heritage Foundation using gospel as an insult? Okay. Glass fucking houses, apparently. A recent analysis by Jay Green at the Heritage Foundation found that existing literature on this topic suffers from a series of weaknesses that prevent research from being able to draw credible causal conclusions about a relationship between medical interventions and suicide. Okay, so the Heritage Foundation is, you know, obviously not a medical association, and they're also extremely biased. So, okay, so they did get a PhD. Wonder what he's a PhD in. You want to find out? I bet you his Twitter is not going to tell us. Oh, okay, Center for Education. Let's see here. Let's see, come on, tell us what his PhD is in. Tell us what his PhD is in. PhD in government! The government PhD is spoken. He is technically a doctor, folks, so I guess we have to listen to him. Okay, so fucking government doctor has got some takes. Series of weaknesses, right? Okay, I participated in a recent event discussing Green's conclusion that it's possible that increasing minors' access, that's a weird quote, to cross-sex intervention is associated with a significant increase in the adolescent suicide rate. The findings suggested the gender-affirming policies. Okay, so you found that trans treatment results in more suicide? All right. So you've got the government doctor. We've got Jay Richard, who's also a doctor. Let's see what you're a doctor in, shall we? Okay, well, we went to the Catholic University of America, so that's a good start. I've gone to Wikipedia, and we're finding an autobiography for Jay Richards, who, oh boy, what a face. Wow, okay, so, let's see here. It appears that Dr. Richards is a theology doctor. So, to review, we have on this panel that establishes youth suicide rate spiking as a result of hormone treatment, we've got the government doctor, we have the religion doctor, and we have a person who isn't a doctor but is part of the Independent Women's Forum. And you know, I'm not the kind of feminist who's just going to be like, oh, you're a strong independent woman, I guess you can decide what puberty blockers to give our kids. No, I don't trust you guys either. Anyway, okay, so the doctors have spoken. The doctors have spoken. Cool. It's time to stop cruelly manipulating children with cult-like slogans. It's time to stop. We must, yeah, okay. So, basically she's just, summing up the argument. We're going to pass laws that affirm that parents have primary responsibility for their children's education and health. Okay, well, that was a silly, dumb waste of my time. The few facts that are in this article, twisted beyond recognition, mostly just lies. So, I don't know. There it is. That's the Daily Signal. If you like this, like the video and comment and do all that shit you're supposed to do. You could subscribe. Or just tell me why I'm wrong. If you like this, do let me know, though, because, I'll probably keep doing this for a while until I get bored. It didn't take me that much time because this is stupid, and disproving their stuff took no time at all. I was able to do it before coffee. So, yeah, I'm going to eat my breakfast and go to group therapy because I'm doing fine. Everyone, have a lovely day.